Good afternoon from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. It's 2:19 p.m. on the 5th of April 2025, and I find myself wanting to read you some more stories. But we finished the book about angels, which was a little bit triggering for Mama T. I've been a bit emotional in the past week. Anyway, it is what it is. And I thought I would start reading Greatest Mysteries of the Modern World by John Pinkney. So I haven't even looked at it or perused it. We could just go at random like I did with the other book of mysteries, but then I'll get muddled. And I don't know if I'll read the entire book, but I kind of got obsessed with reading that entire Angels book for whatever reasons. The Angels obviously got a lot out of that, including my segues and my trauma processing and my emotionalism. So hopefully I won't get triggered by any of these stories. It's been a bit intense, people have heard. But as my psychiatrist reminded me, it's just one of my metamorphoses I go through with rather monotonous regularity. And I come out always quite astonishingly more powerful than ever when I come out the other side, although the process itself is really quite catalysation. There were quite a few intense channelings, and it was a bit intense. And but those of you who know me well, those of you who are close to me, kind of forgive me and tolerate me because they realise it's part of my ageing process. The older I'm getting, the more open psychically and spiritually I'm getting. It's been a bit hard to calibrate, to be honest, even by my standards. And I'm very sensitive and very emotional, and I hope in the next few weeks or months it comes back into some kind of balance again. Anyway, I'm all dressed up, made up, gussied up, just got to put on my underbust corset and a pair of shoes and my lovely beaded sandals. They're getting quite old now, but I only paid $15 for them in an op shop, and they're fabulous shoes. You want to see them? Even when I saw my urologist when I just got them new, she was hellishly impressed. I'm a bit beaten up now because I've worn them a lot. But just look. Oh. So every time I wear them the last few dances, I thought, I wonder how long they're going to actually last. And yeah, they strap up like Roman sandals. Anyway, the Mama T knows how to survive, as I said to my wonderful urologist. She said to me, "Oh, Tanya, they would have been very expensive when they were first in the shop." I said, "I know, how lucky am I?" Sometimes just involves a bit of luck, being in the right place at the right time, getting a wonderful bargain like that. And they were actually brand new. They must have been, old stock or leftovers that some shop gave to charity, and I was the wonderful, grateful recipient of that. So wonderful. But now I need to manifest. I need to manifest a new pair of kick-ass boots, not $8,000 ones, you understand, because that's too much even for me, and not $4,000 ones either, although Mama T fell in love with those boots. But, just some nice boots for winter, maybe patent leather or something that's, affordable within reason of my non-income bracket, you understand. I should keep an eye out in the second-hand shops, because sometimes, like those, you get old stock from shops and you just strike it lucky. I once got a gorgeous pair of Doc Martens. This was many years ago when I was still friends with the forensic psych nurse. And she actually saw them and put $5 on them to hold them for me because she knew they were my size, and which was very kind of her. She had some wonderful, kind and generous ways about her, let's be fair. And she saw them, she put a hold on them up there at Annerley, at this op shop in Annerley that specialises in alternative clothing for, goths and witchy types like me. And then she came round to my house. She said, I've put these Doc Martens on hold. Come with me straight away. Have you got enough money? I didn't really, but I just scraped it through. Said, I'll make it happen, Gail. She should have actually rung me and asked me, because sometimes it's embarrassing when I don't have enough money, but I did. Fortuitously, that week, that day, I had enough money. She said, come with me, I've put them on hold, I know they're perfect for you. And she took me down there and I bought them and they fitted me perfectly and I wore them to death. I was so happy with them, really happy. I bought another pair that are fake Doc Martens and they're actually too big for me. And I wore them to one of the gigs at Jacob's Well last year and I felt like a hobbit, with even more like a hobbit than normal, because they're too big for me and they were kind of a bit floppy. And anyway, I felt like I was wearing clown shoes. I thought, oh, now I'll never be a supermodel. Who's going to love this woman with her ridiculously too big Doc Martens, am I right? I've still got them. I haven't done anything with them. I should just give them to charity again, pay it forward, and someone with even bigger feet than me will be happy, right? Dear Goddess. I don't know how they ended up being too big for me because I ordered the right size. But anyway, sometimes that happens when you buy things online. It's a bit of a gamble and a risk. Anyway, so enough about footwear and shoes and foundations and stability, which is the spiritual meaning of feet and shoes. Let's continue with the wonderful mysteries. I'll actually read the preface because it's not very long and it's quite sweet actually. Quote, the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. Albert Einstein. I agree with that. When three men vanished inexplicably from a lighthouse in Scotland's Flannan Islands, official investigators tried desperately to discover what their fate had been. But after weeks of inspection and inquiry, they could produce no more than a report which closed with the words, there is no explanation. Imagine that. 3 men disappearing and no one knows how and why that happened. Imagine their families would be so distraught. In January 2003, which is only 22 years ago, in fact, I moved into this house in May 2003. Doesn't seem that long ago now. That's why I did my little genie, I dream of Jeannie nod, because it's a blink in the space-time and it's gone. And I must say, I look prettier now than I did 22 years ago. Well, I was on very hefty psych meds. They were not good for me, people. They were not good for me. My psychiatrist is so proud of me, blowing life back into myself over and over and over again until I've reached this level of awesomeness. could be a lot more awesome and I could be a lot more productive and a lot more successful, but I have a feeling that from 60 on, I'm going to just keep getting better and better and better and better with the love and the support and the kindness and the nourishment of the gods, the Holy One and all manifestations of holiness. As long as they're kind to me and don't kick me fair up the tuchus too hard, because then I break down and flail like a upside down turtle, flailing, arms and legs on the air, just fucking flailing. That's not good. No more flailing, no more self-immolation, no more lack of faith in my own angels that I pray to daily, no more lack of faith in my true friends that have demonstrated that they're true friends over the decades. No more doubts, no more fears, just perfect alignment. Confidence, grace, truth, honour and integrity, and true and deep, sweet, loyal and faithful love. Yep, babies. Well, that's what I'll be dancing for tonight, in honour of that. It's a worthy prayer to sweat out, isn't it? It's a worthy prayer. Right, my sweethearts, my darlings, my YouTube subscribers, my non-YouTube subscribers, my interdimensional watchers, my angels, my fae, my blessed ones that come to me and send me heartfelt messages of love, light and truth, the voodoo gods, all that is. Here we are today, strutting our stuff, dancing our dance, telling our stories. So let us continue. Let's get back on the program, people of Earth. Okay, let's do it, babies. In January 2003, the Australian Navy reached similar conclusions about a 150-ton craft, High Aim 6, drifting deserted off Broome. Oh, always wanted to go to Broome. The captain's reading glasses lay in the wheelhouse. Toothbrushes hung neatly from a rack. In lockers, clothes lay neatly folded. Nothing had been stolen, and yet the captain and his 10 crewmen had vanished without trace. Again, investigators could find no explanation. So, it's a bit odd, isn't it, people of Earth? Disappearances that seemingly defy logic have played a tantalizingly prominent role in the history of the 20th and 21st centuries. The strangest of these incidents, with their echoes of the Mary Celeste, are examined in these pages. Like, where did they go, those crew members and passengers? Where did they actually go? And the ships are floating around without them. It's odd. I've always wondered about ghost ships. They kind of scare me a bit. I've been on a ship sailing to Europe and back, and it's at times it can be a bit terrifying, to be honest, especially when they do the drills. When those steel doors shut down below sea deck and you know that you're trapped behind because you're poor and have the cheaper cabins below sea level. See also the Titanic, it's exactly how it was, even in my day, 1973, sailing in those ships. They leave the poor ones to perish. It's a horrible thought, but that's what happens. If you don't get up on top above deck, and with at least a chance of climbing into a life raft, you've got no chance at all. However, sea is my mistress and she's in my blood, and every day in every way she calls to me. It wouldn't hurt for me to go to the sea again soon, actually. I've missed her. Also analysed are unsolved murders which, for generations, have perplexed the sharpest investigative minds. World transform. I just had this image flash into my mind. I've seen it somewhere in a photograph. It's this, I think it's in Bali or maybe Phuket, with all these like grass huts, and they're all laid out like a kind of a star pattern out on top of the sea, and you can stay there. Just flashed into my mind. I'd love that. I would love staying there. Just the blue, the image just came so crystal clear just then while I was reading. Anyway, focus, Tanya Aarons. Yes, YouTube, I'll try to be good, I promise. World-transforming events which secretly occurred within the brutal regimes of Hitler and Stalin. The mysterious message transmitted by a passenger aircraft moments before it was lost for half a century. There is also a catalogue of unexplained phenomena, the cross seen by millions of television viewers, which glowed uncannily in an Australian cemetery for 60 years. Haven't heard of that one. The faces of a long dead dean and his wife, which gradually bloomed from mould on the wall of an English church. That's a bit freaky too. The fast-moving cylindrical shadow, 25 kilometres long, photographed on the surface of Mars, and many more. I have devoted much of my career as a writer to collecting, chronicling, and wherever possible, investigating unexplained mysteries. Oh, I'm going to enjoy this. Thank you, John Pinckney, from 2004. Going to enjoy this, people of Earth. This book contains some of the profoundest of the puzzles I have studied. The cases cover a broad spectrum, from pilots' fatal encounters with aerial unknowns to the question of how a novelist writing in 1914 managed to predict Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor and its date, December 1941, which is transposing 1914 to 41 as two digits transposed. Interesting. The mysteries presented here vary widely, but they do have one characteristic in common. All are unsolved. Right. Let us begin, people of Earth. People of Earth and whoever else receives our messages off the satellites out in deep space. We're here and we're square and don't pay us too much attention. We're still hairless apes with hair triggers over the red buttons. Frightening thought, especially a certain orange person. Dear goddess. Doomed plane's message mystified the world. Airliner Stardust. When the British airliner Stardust vanished in 1947 on a routine flight from Buenos Aires to Santiago, rescue aircraft spent 5 days combing vast tracts of the Andes mountain range and found nothing. But even after the search had been abandoned, a further puzzle remained. Just before contact with Santiago Airport was lost, Stardust's radio operator had transmitted a single strange word 3 times in Morse code, a word unknown in any language. For more than half a century, code breakers, linguists, and academic theorists have tried to make sense of what that word might signify, but without success. The meaning behind Stardust's final haunting call remains a mystery. So it's whoever took them, the strange language must have come from another dimension, was trying to say, we've got your boys. Maybe they were trying to warn them, or who knows, not necessarily a negative thing. It's a pity they didn't speak English though, because they might have been able to find them in time. Or in that case, it wouldn't have been English, it was Morse code. British airliner. Yeah, it probably would have been English. Anyway, so here we have it, the story, the actual story. Buenos Aires Airport, 2nd of August, 1947. So, just almost over 2 years after the war ended in Germany. The passengers occupying 4 of the window seats on the routine flight from Buenos Aires to Santiago, Chile, would not have been out of place in a Hollywood thriller. Paul Simpson, 44, was a British Foreign Office diplomat. In his role as King's Messenger, he was carrying, in a secret panel of his briefcase, a message from His Majesty George VI to the Chilean Foreign Minister. Directly behind Simpson, aboard the Lancastrian, a converted British bomber, sat a Swiss banker and a Pakistani businessman with a large diamond sewn into the lining of his jacket. So all carrying precious cargo of some kind. That's what I used to always say to people who took my kids on, like, in their car with them anywhere. I'd say, drive carefully, you're carrying precious cargo, and give them a sinister, threatening look. And the other parents would be like, indeed, I'm carrying my own precious cargo too. And I'd be like, good. And it's kind of ironic because I myself drive like a maniac and always have, always will. But anyway, never had any major accidents, thank the gods. Nearly died in a car accident when I was 7. My 7th, the year I was 7, I had so many really bad, catastrophic calamities happen to me. And that was one of them. My sister nearly got us all killed. She was driving. But anyway, moving on from that, just remembered about the precious cargo. You can survive your 7th year surrounded by maniacs, breaking your wrist at a health camp no less, a life-threatening, almost near-death experience in a car crash, and all the other shit that was going down that I won't mention because it's just too awful. But you know, because it's there in the introduction to my channel. If you can survive all that, babies, as a 7-year-old, pretty much can survive anything. But let's hope that from 60 on, my life is balanced, like that young man unwittingly reminded me when he mentioned the word. No one wanted to talk to me, but you're talking to me, so I have balance. I took that key word balance as the message delivered by the gods. It can just be one word that can make you sit up and take notice, people of Earth. We all need equilibrium in our lives. Equilibrium. In front was a black-clad German widow returning to Chile with the ashes of her dead husband. Oh. The aircrafts, I wonder how that could be. They must have gone back to Germany and he died over there. Just trying to work that out. Or maybe he was from Chile. They were in, it was a British flight. Well, anyway, I can't work that out, but it doesn't matter. She just happened to be a German widow returning to Chile. Right, carry on. Don't need to work out all the circumstantial evidence all around that. Do we? The aircraft's captain, Reginald Cook, first officer, Norman Coombe, and second officer, Donald Checklin, had all served as Royal Air Force pilots in World War II, so they were experienced pilots. Experienced wireless operator Dennis Harmer was also ex-RAF, and the stewardess Iris Evans had been a petty officer in the Wrens. Right. All very professional people, unlike the Mamati. Well, it's all relative, isn't it? I can be professional when I want to be. Stardust herself, registration G-AGWH, which would probably be pronounced in, the military code. Was it Alpha something? What's G? Can't remember. I used to know that once upon a time. My dad used to rattle it off, making himself look like he had military training, and he got kicked out of the army because he was too fucking crazy, by the way. Well, it's not actually written it down like that, but I read between the lines. It's not hard to read between the lines when you're raised by a lunatic. But having said that, my mother was very cruel to him too, so it's enough to send anyone tropo. Right, where were we? Stardust herself was one of 60 bombers which defence authorities had sold to the British Overseas Airways Corporation for conversion into passenger aircraft. She retained some of the outward appearance of a warplane, but her interior boasted every luxury available at the time. Just got a message. Pizzas, $1 only. It's not how it works. You buy one and you get the next one for $1, which is a good deal. Did that last Saturday. But no, Mamati's getting too fat, and so no more pizza for a couple of weeks, maybe. Right. Even the 9 passenger seats placed in a line on the cabin's port side could be converted into bunks. Well, that's handy dandy, isn't it? Flying is so bloody uncomfortable. I haven't flown in years. I think that's why I have an anxiety about even flying home for a quick trip. It's just, the last flight I took, I nearly got crashed. No, it wasn't the last one, it was the one before that. But anyway, it was very scary. Just say. The whole wing tip went down, scraped along the tarmac, My friend Rosie Price said to me, "My God, you could have caught fire and died." Thanks, Rosie. Ignorance is bliss, you know. She said, "Look at all the fire trucks lined up already." They saw it all laying out in front of them, all moved in. I went, "Shut up, Rosie. Well, I don't know, won't hurt me." Oh, dear goddess. It was very frightening, though, because I actually felt the wingtips scraping the tarmac. Come fly with me, come fly with me. And then the scariest part of all was during the COVID, earlier COVID years. All the planes are dropping left, right and centre out of the sky, and all the personnel that were dropping dead. That scares me to this day. Puts me off flying. Well, anyway, you take your chance sometimes just walking across the road, so you've just got to take a deep breath and wing it, babies. Wing it. At 13:55 hours, which is 1:55 p.m, crew and passengers experienced a rush of raw power as their plane taxied for takeoff. Stardust, which could fly as high and as far as any commercial aircraft yet built, was ready to begin a run-of-the-mill trip of less than 4 hours across the Andes, which is also a scary flight. I've seen too many movies about what went wrong when they crashed in the Andes and had to eat each other to survive. Sometimes you shouldn't watch horror movies. That happened to be a true story, by the way. Very terrifying. Anyway, let's not digress too much. Past Aconcagua, Aconcagua, the highest mountain in South America. Aconcagua. Give it up, Tanya, you don't speak Spanish or Portuguese. I do little words here and there, like my favourite is corazón and cojones. My two favourite words that I have made a study to learn how to pronounce, since they're my favourite words, but I don't actually speak Spanish. But one day I might. If I went to South America, I might pick it up along the way, as I tend to do, because I'm a cunning linguist. Well, I am. Not what you thought I said, by the way, gentlemen. Anyway, all the women in the room just fell off their perches. Throughout the journey, wireless operator Harmer sent regular Morse code messages confirming that the plane was on course. In the 1940s, the dot dash system, invented in 1832 by American painter Samuel Morse, didn't know he was a painter, was still the preferred message of long-range air-to-ground communication. Technology enabling, pilots to make direct long-distance voice contact was far from being perfected. At 1741 hours, that should say 1741 hours, if I remember correctly. Can you imagine me in the military? There'd be anarchy and chaos. I'd tear that whole institution apart in a day. Well, don't believe in war. All war is hell. Remember that, people of Earth. Anyway, where were we? 5:41 p.m. When the scheduled flight seemed almost complete, Harmer transmitted the words ETA, which means estimated time of arrival, Santiago, 1745 hours, Stendek, STNDEC. I wonder what Stendak means. Anyway, they were due in 4 minutes, which isn't that far away. Something went wrong in those 4 bloody minutes. Astonishing thought. Oh, I thought I smudged. Sometimes I smudge and I go out all smudged and I wonder why people look at me like I'm weird and crazy and I'm just a bit discombobulated, you understand. But when I pull myself together, be afraid, be very afraid. Right. Woman who's died 15 times. I'm thinking about writing a story about that. It's a good line, isn't it? Woman who died 15 times. I hope they're finished with that, the gods, because I'm a bit done with that. Anyway, eventually there'll be a 16th time, and that will be the final curtains. You'll never have to indulge me in my eccentricities ever again. Oh, will you miss me? Some of you might miss me. My dear ones, my dearly beloved, we are gathered here once. Oh dear God, well you have to laugh. The signal was logged by a Chilean Air Force officer at Santiago Control Tower. He subsequently testified that it was loud and clear and given out very fast. Sounds like a joke I once heard about someone asking the bank teller. How did that joke go? It was actually said to a friend of mine who worked as a young girl as a bank teller. This bloke came in to her cubicle and he said, I want $500. And she said, how would you like it? Meaning, in hundreds or 20s or $50 notes. And quick as a wit, he said to her, hard and fast and under the table. She said, I was so embarrassed, Tanya. I just wanted to curl up and die. I said, that was so witty and so quick and so off the cuff. I would have slapped him on the shoulder and handed him a cigar. She said, no, you wouldn't. You would have died of embarrassment too. I said, no, that is funny. Inappropriate to a young teller, speaking to her like that while she's undertaking her professional duties, but still funny as hell. I still kind of laugh about it to this day. Anyway, the officer had no trouble understanding the bulk of the message. Aircraft G-AGWH would be landing in 4 minutes, but that final word, Stendak, spelled S-T-E-N-D-E-C, perplexed him. He asked the radio operator to repeat it. Maybe they were meant to say stand by and it got garbled. I'm just trying to, think of the obvious sometimes. Dennis Harmer obliged by transmitting Stendak again, twice. He had now spelled the peculiar word exactly the same way 3 times. After Harmer's second confirmation, there was radio silence. The British South American Airways flight from Buenos Aires was off the air. It would never make its promised landing at Santiago Airport, only 4 minutes away from landing. I wonder how many kilometres away from the airport that would be. I don't know much about aviation. Travelling at whatever speed they were travelling at. Oh, well, dear God, it's just terrifying, isn't it? A massive 5-day search by planes of the Chilean and Argentinian air forces found nothing. Within hours of the disappearance, the theories and the wild conjectures poured forth. One possible supposition was that Stardust it's kind of a fitting name, isn't it? Had somehow been sabotaged by enemies of Britain. During the war, the continent of South America had remained neutral. Bullshit, it did. Took in Nazis. There's nothing neutral about that at all. Let's just leave it at that, shall we? Now, in this immediate post-war period, some of her nations had been welcoming havens for fleeing Nazis and other war criminals from ravaged Europe. See? It's true. So handle it, babies. Could it be that the presence on the plane of the King's representative carrying secret papers had inspired England's old adversaries to exact a murderous revenge? Very likely. Another widely touted theory was that a group of armed Nazis, possibly among the passengers, had seized the Lancastrian and flown her to a concealed airstrip somewhere, her crew either captive or murdered. Stardust suggested the promoters of this idea might eventually become a small part of a Nazi plan to establish a resurgent Reich on the South American continent. We just Others preferred to believe that the silencing of Stardust might be the fruit of a plot hatched by the increasingly belligerent Soviet Union. But whoever had masterminded the disappearance, these theorists insisted it had to be sabotage and part of a sinister pattern. In the preceding 4 months, 2 other planes from the same airline had also disappeared. Right, it's too much of a coincidence. You know, if it happens once, but it happens twice and 3 times, pardon me. I don't know why, but my lactose-free milk and my tea is repeating on me. I haven't had anything to eat since breakfast, so that shouldn't be the problem. It's really annoying. Really annoying people. But anyway, on we go and on we go. One belief, however, gripped the imagination of a section of the public more powerfully than any other. It had its genesis in an event which reportedly had occurred over the United States just 39 days before Stardust ceased transmission. On 24th of June 1947, while flying his private plane from Chehalis, Washington, to his home in Boise, Idaho, businessman Kenneth Arnold, I've heard of him, was startled by a bright light. Ah yes, he was the one that saw that all those UFOs that flew over. Can't think of the name of the place now. It'll come to me if they don't reveal it in the story. They called it, it'll come to me, it's going to annoy me. Something lights, they called it. Phoenix lights. Or maybe that was a separate story that happened too. But anyway, this fellow saw it for everyone else. Looking to the north, he saw 9 gleaming circular objects speeding above the Cascade Mountain range. They seemed to be metallic. Arnold said he watched them for about 2 minutes before they streamed away over Oregon. During the fueling stop, the clearly rattled executive described his experience to Nolan Skiff, editor of the East Oregonian. The objects, Arnold insisted, had shown unmistakable signs of being under intelligent control, and they had flown like a saucer would if you skipped it across the water. anti-gravitic technology, bending space-time, all that jazz. The Associated Press seized on the story. The mystery discs, which a journalist would soon rechristen flying saucers, made headline news around the globe. Floodgates opened. On 4th of July 1947, Earl J. Smith, captain of the United Airlines DC-3, said his plane had been buzzed by several discs while en route from Boise to Pendleton. On the same day, large crowds of people in Oregon, Vancouver and Washington saw formations of brightly lit discs hovering overhead. Numerous police were present at all three sightings. Before long, newspapers began to publish witnesses' purported photographs of the saucers. Many pictures were fuzzy and of arguable veracity, but in an era when the possibility of Russian attack seemed all too imminent, it was relatively easy to believe also that aliens might be preparing to strike. Had stardust been skynapped by beings from another world? And was that strange 7-letter word, Stendek, the cryptic clue they had left behind? It has often been observed that the first 3 letters of Stendek spell ETs backward. But this was not a term popularly used in 1947, if used at all. Through the ensuing decades, code breakers, linguists, academics, and ingenious members of the public tried desperately to deduce what Stendek might mean. Many observers pointed out that the letters are an anagram of descent. That's interesting, very interesting. But neat solution though this may seem, it makes little sense. The operator, in the early part of his message, had already advised that the Lancastrian was preparing to land, so the addition of descent, especially in anagrammatical form, would seem redundant, to say the least. Depends on where you're descending to. Maybe they were descending to the fabled inner earth. Or maybe they were descending because, well no, they would have been ascending if ET had beamed the whole craft up. No, that can't be right. But anyway, just a thought, people of Earth. Just a thought. We know for a fact that there are, unexplained submersible craft that have been witnessed coming in and out of the oceans. Other theorists believed that paucity of oxygen at the plane's stated altitude of 24,000 feet might have caused the operator to scramble his message. But this too seems unlikely. Yeah, because the rest was quite clear. Why would he suddenly scramble it? That's not logical. While it is relatively easy to rearrange the letters of Stendek into descent, it's considerably harder to perform the trick in Morse code. It stretches credibility to suggest that Dennis Harmer had performed precisely the same feat in code 3 times. And the thin air theorem was equally shaky. Every flight crew member was fully protected by oxygen equipment. There was a large body of belief, not among pilots, that Harmer might have been trying to transmit his aircraft's name, which is usually what you do when you're about to go down. As in go down into a crash situation. Which in Morse shares some characteristics with Stendek, but aviation professionals quickly dismissed the idea. In air-to-ground communications, pilots and crew identified themselves with their registration numbers, in Stardust case G-AGWH, rather than the fanciful names the airlines had given them. And why, in any case, would the operator have transmitted his plane's name at the end of a routine message? Another mind-stretching idea was that the enigmatic word was an acronym standing perhaps for Stardust, Tank Empty, No Diesel, Expect Crash. But why a Morse operator minutes from death would have troubled himself to invent a word puzzle, the theorists could not say. In the end, the most enduring belief among a considerable portion of the planet's population was that Stendek might be a message from alien visitors. The word today is virtually forgotten, but so widely recognised was it in the decades following Stardust's disappearance that in the 1970s a Spanish publisher confidently made it the title of his new UFO magazine, corrupting the spelling to Stendek, Stendek. And there you have it in Morse as well, for those of you that can read Morse code. Where's the original one? I won't bother showing you because it's exactly the same as this one. We've just translated it as a K instead of a C into English. I was just wondering if it was a different dot or dash on the end, but it's not. Mount Tupungato near the Argentina-Chile border, 28th of January 2000. A 23-year-old member of an Andean climbing expedition saw it first. Far above him, on a rugged slope 5,200 meters up the side of the extinct Tupungato volcano, was something glinting in the early morning sunlight. For a painful hour he struggled closer, until he could clearly see that the object which had attracted his attention was part of an aircraft fuselage lying in a field of debris. Assuming that he had happened upon the site of a recent crash, the young climber signalled his companions. Before dusk fell, the group had studied and taken photographs of the wreckage, which they would later present with a written report to Argentinian authorities. On 21st of February, an expedition comprising 17 soldiers led by Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bustos ascended the volcano. The climb was so difficult that one member of the team suffered a heart attack and was stretchered down the mountain. Oh dear goddess. Well, that's awful, isn't it? After 4 grueling days battling against high winds and vertiginous slopes, the party reached the glacier on which the wreckage had been found. Several metres from the scrap of fuselage lay a Rolls-Royce engine. An aircraft's main wheels, one still fully blown up, rested near a twisted propeller. There were human remains also, clumps of hair, a hand, fragments of a torso. The colonel led his men in prayer over this poignant evidence of lives lost. Below, in the Andes foothills, the army established a base with 40 men and 100 mules. En route to what the officers were then erroneously referring to as the crash site, several mules plunged to their deaths from a slippery natural bridge. Others bolted. But eventually, with the aid of military helicopters, the soldiers were able to convey all of the wreckage, tantalisingly estimated to be less than 1/10 of the plane, to crash experts for analysis. Quite early in this perilous exercise, the officers had definitely identified the aircraft, or fragments thereof, as stardust, vanished 53 years before. Holy hell. Now it was the analyst's task to ask perplexed questions. Where was the other 9/10 of the plane? How was it possible that on a mountain often climbed and flown over, the wreckage had taken more than half a century to be found? And how had Stardust's highly experienced captain and navigator managed to perpetrate such a gross navigational error, flying the aircraft 80 kilometres off course? The first of these questions was tentatively answered by an Argentinian glacial specialist. Stardust, he surmised, must have crashed into the upper part of the glacier, covering the slope of the volcano. There, over the long years, it had been gradually entombed by snowfalls until it became part of the glacier itself. Slowly, the glacier, with scattered wreckage embedded, had moved down the slope until in warmer weather the leading edge melted, revealing a few tantalising traces of what had been the Lancastrian and the people who flew in her. As years elapsed, the expert accurately predicted more and more of the aircraft would be thawed out of its hiding place in the ice. And again they show the Stendeck Morse code. But why had Stardust strayed so disastrously from her course? And how could the captain have imagined he was due to land at Santiago when in fact he was about to slam into an icy volcano? To answer these questions, Argentinian and British aviation experts availed themselves of knowledge that would have had little meaning for the flyers of 1947. They theorised that Stardust had fallen victim to the jet stream a high-speed, high-altitude wind that was barely known of and even less understood in the 1940s. Stardust's captain, they agreed, must have decided on that doom-laden August afternoon to avoid the bad weather over the Andes by flying high above it. It was a task for which the converted bomber was well suited, but as he gained altitude, Reginald Cook little realised that he was climbing directly into the lethal teeth of the jet stream, howling 24,000 feet above the snow-capped Andean peaks. The bad weather swirling below prevented Cook and his crew members from seeing landmarks, and the wind's colossal power slowed their aircraft to such an extent that it confused them about where they actually were. When Cook began to ease Stardust down for what he imagined would be a safe landing at Santiago Airport, he was still on the wrong side of the Andes, with a towering volcano dead ahead. Although some analysts disagreed with their findings, the experts were generally judged to have given an accurate summary of what in all likelihood had thrown the Lancastrian off course in her final minutes. Pardon me. The 1947 crash of Stardust had not, after all, been a case of an aircraft encountering a UFO with deadly results. Pardon me. However, such UFO-related cases had been chronicled earlier than 1947 and would recur subsequently. Try and remember what year the Phoenix Lights were, because I think I've got that muddled with Kenneth Arnold. I'm just going to Google that, because I like to be accurate and not make a complete fool of myself. But I'm pretty sure, I think it was 62 actually. I think. Let's just Google Phoenix Lights. Got that stupid I'm not a robot thing. It happens every time I try to look at anything now. Well, I'm way off base. Way off. March 13, 1997, by the gods. Well, when I'm wrong, people of Earth. I do apologise. When I'm wrong, I was out by about, what did I say, 1962? Way off base. But anyway, Kenneth Arnold was one of the first to see, to report seeing strange lights in the sky or metallic objects, and that's where the name Flying Saucer first got, as I said earlier in the story, got coined by a journalist. Right, well, here I am thinking I'm so clever and knowledgeable, and I got that wrong. Well, there you go. One or two can be wrong. Don't pretend to be an expert, so I'll just dust myself off. Carry on, people of Earth. Awkward. Aircraft disappearances of the flying saucer kind, or events which at least bore the marks of intervention by an unknown agency, had occurred in Australia in 1934 and 1937. Pretty but delicious. almost 60, pretty, but doing what people know. Who's going to love me now? But you know that I'm stupid as well as crazy. Not so crazy. Don't underestimate me. Just so. Anyway, you have to laugh. 2 further cases, one involving the death of a pilot, the other of a pilot whose plane merged with a UFO before disappearing, occurred over the United States in 1948 and 1953. In 1978, a young pilot flying over Australia's Bass Strait vanished, along with his plane, after radioing that he was being orbited by an unidentifiable craft. I have documented these tragedies elsewhere in this book. After 53 years, the mystery of Stardust's fate had been partially resolved, but what analysts of every shade failed to do was convincingly explain what the final, tantalizing word in that doomed operator's Morse code really meant. Stendak, 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 Stendak. Just for the artistic license, he's typed it in ever diminishing returns, which is quite clever. QE2 and the Spectral Radio Station. In 1982, 35 years after the Lancastrian airliner Stardust's final message perplexed the world, radio operators aboard the QE2 found themselves at the centre of their own Morse code mystery. Over a period of 18 hours, the ship received a series of Morse signals in a format superseded long before. Purportedly, the messages came from a ground station which had been shut down and its transmitters dismantled in 1977. Broadcast engineers have devised numerous complex theories to explain the strange phenomenon away, but the phantom Morse code, the phantom Morse messages remain a mystery. Right, we're 1 hour and 8 minutes in, and I'm wondering if we've got time for another story. Yes, why not? Let's carry on, people of Earth. Puzzle of the blood-soaked peer, spelt P-E-E-R, as in, peerage in the aristocracy. Lord Lucan, spelt L-U-C-A-N. Did John Bingham, 7th Earl of Lucan, brutally bludgeon his children's nanny to death, stuffing her bleeding corpse into a canvas mailbag? What a horrible thing to do to someone. Or did he fight courageously to save her, trying unsuccessfully to overwhelm a maniacal intruder? The question of whether Lord Lucan was a monster or a hero divided England. Perhaps wisely, the 7th Earl did not stay around to present his side of the story. Hours after the killing, he disappeared and subsequently was declared dead. However, a British detective superintendent challenges that finding. He claims that he helped police interrogate Lord Lucan in Perth, Western Australia, in 1987. A crucial question remains. Did Scotland Yard ever act on the detective's report? Belgravia, London, 8th of November 1974. 7-year-old George Bingham and his sister Camilla, 4, were so deeply asleep in their upstairs nursery that they heard nothing of the crashing and screams from the basement. In later life, George would recall that he had been dreaming of lying on a beach, dazzlingly bright sunlight penetrating his eyelids. He blinked into wakefulness, and a man said, "Sorry, Sonny, you'll have to get up." It was a policeman shining a torch into his face. This was the dark, rain-swept night of horror in which the lives of George, Camilla, and their older sister Frances were changed forever. The Earl of Lucan's 3 children lived with their mother, Veronica, Lady Lucan, in a stately 6-storey townhouse a short walk from Buckingham Palace. Lord Lucan rented a comparatively modest flat nearby. The evening had begun in routine fashion in the fatherless Lucan household. Lady Lucan had given the nanny, Sandra Rivette, permission to go out with her boyfriend, but at the last moment Sandra changed her mind, deciding to avoid the bitter weather and remain in the warm comfort of the servants' quarters. At 6:30 she dressed the 2 younger children in their pyjamas and tucked them into bed in their nursery. George clutching his favourite teddy bear, Big Ted. Lady Frances, aged 10, was allowed to sit up in her bedroom to watch television. Sandra read for several hours. Then, at about 9 o'clock, she rose and walked to Lady Lucan's sitting room to ask whether she would like a cup of tea. Lady Lucan thanked her and said, "Have it here with me." Sandra bustled downstairs to the kitchen. 20 minutes later, when the nanny still had not returned, Lady Lucan went down to the main level of the immense house to look for her. The kitchen and adjoining breakfast room were in the basement. Lady Lucan noticed, with mild surprise, that the light was off. She tried the switch, but it didn't work. She called Sandra's name. Silence. The steps leading to the basement were bathed with light from the hall. Still calling for the nanny, Lady Lucan began to descend, and then, when she reached the breakfast room, recoiled. The walls and floor were splashed with blood. In a corner lay what looked like a misshapen sack. As if hypnotized, Lady Lucan stepped closer. It was a large mail bag. Crammed into it was a body, the head protruding. The face and skull were battered almost beyond recognition, but she knew it was Sandra's head. Oh, the poor woman. It's just dreadful. Screaming, Lady Lucan turned to run for the steps, but someone tall and powerful, grabbed her from behind and dragged her, struggling, into the dark kitchen. The assailant tried to force fingers down her throat. Oh, she bit them hard. Enraged, he began to beat her about the head with what she would later describe as some kind of club. Lady Lucan was only 157 centimetres, 5 foot 2 inches hall. But the knowledge that her children were asleep upstairs and in mortal danger invested her with a strength she had never known she possessed. Blood clogging her eyes, reeling from the blows and punches, she groped desperately in the darkness, found the attacker's testicles, and squeezed them with an iron grip. Crying out in pain, the man collapsed and fell to the floor. Lady Lucan fled. Drinkers in the Plumbers Arms Hotel were enjoying their last orders when a young woman in a torn nightdress, her face a mask of blood, appeared in the doorway. She screamed, "She's been murdered! Sandra, and he tried to kill me too, and my children are still in the house. Help me!" While his wife Diana used hotel linen to staunch the woman's bleeding, the landlord, Derek Whitehouse, rang police. Within 7 minutes, an emergency team was at the Lucan house. Detectives quickly found the instrument that had caused Sandra Rivette's death, a 23-centimetre length of lead piping. Amid the smashed china scattered across the bloodied floor was a broken light bulb. The killer had unscrewed it so that his victim would not recognise him. But the children were safe. George and Camilla still fast asleep in the nursery. Frances crouched sobbing on the first floor landing. Whoever had committed this appalling crime had no designs on them, thank the goddess. That night, detectives interviewed Lady Lucan in her hospital bed. Facially bruised and with her skull severely lacerated, she found it difficult to speak, but she managed to say she was sure that the man who had brutalised her in the darkness was her husband. He had shouted at her, and she would know his voice anywhere. At this time, Lord Lucan was 39 years old. He had married Veronica, daughter of an army officer, in 1963, separating from her 10 years later. The Eton-educated Earl, who had served in the Coldstream Guards, was known in London as a playboy who regularly lost far more than he could afford at the gambling tables of Mayfair. To the investigating detectives it seemed on the surface an open and shut case. Lucan, who had made no secret of his obsessive desire to gain custody of the children, had to be the killer. In all probability, he had bludgeoned the nanny in the darkened breakfast room, mistaking her for his wife. When he discovered his error, he went on to attack Veronica. It all seemed plain enough, but the police were properly cautious. Many of them expected that within a day or so the missing Earl, lawyer in tow, would give himself up. But that didn't happen. But it would in any case be 5 days before the detectives issued a warrant for Lucan's arrest. However, police had wasted no time on the night of the murder in rushing to the Earl's flat in a nearby street. Lucan's Mercedes was parked outside, but he had fled, driving a borrowed car, as his pursuers would later learn, to a friend's house 70 kilometres away. The friend subsequently recounted the story Lucan had told her, a story she believed, to the detectives. Lucan claimed He had been walking past 46 Lower Belgrave Street en route to the flat to change for dinner at his club. He heard a scream and through the basement's Venetian blinds saw what seemed to be Veronica being attacked by an intruder. Using his own key, Lucan let himself into the house and rushed down to protect her. He found the killer cramming a body into a sack. He attacked the man, landing several blows, but then slipped on the slick of blood on the floor. The murderer ran off, fearing that he would be blamed. Lucan fled also. Police traced the borrowed car to Newhaven, Sussex, a port from which ferries ran to France. In the interior they found bloodstains and a portion of lead pipe matching the weapon that had killed Sandra Rivette. For Britain's tabloid newspapers, this was proof enough. Ignoring the tenets of British law, which require a presumption of innocence, they showered opprobrium on the 7th Earl of Lucan, variously describing him as a murderer, dimwit, snob, racist, and homicidal. In June 1975, London's Coroner's Court found Lucan guilty of murder in absentia, a verdict that scandalised Britons with a regard for fairness under the law. So powerful was the protest that the government 2 years later was forced to pass legislation forbidding a coroner to deliver such a finding against an accused who was not present to defend himself, which to my mind seems to be just. Many people who had known Lucan, even those who considered him a wastrel, refused to believe he was capable of murder. His children as adults shared that view. In an interview, son George said, "Our father loved us far too much to inflict this terrible pain. He did not try to kill our mother, and he was not the person who murdered Sandra. Of that I'm certain." Before he disappeared, Lucan did what he could to secure his children's welfare. In a letter to his brother-in-law, Bill Shand Kidd, isn't that Camilla, the king's wife, isn't that her former married name? Must be related. Anyway, written several hours after the murder, he said, "The circumstantial evidence against me is strong, and I will lie doggo for a while. But I am only concerned about the children. If you can manage it, I would like them to live with you." Lucan's wish was not immediately granted. In the years following the slaying, George and his sisters lived with their mother. But shortly after George turned 14, the arrangement was changed. He and sisters Camilla, now 11, and Frances, 17, went to live with their uncle and aunt, Bill and Christina Shand Kidd. Trying to work out the alliances there. It's a bit odd. Their happy life in the couple's house in Bedfordshire helped them overcome the trauma that had shadowed their childhood. Frances grew up and graduated in law from Bristol University. Camilla, with a double first from Oxford, married a Queen's Counsel and had 2 children. George graduated from Cambridge and subsequently joined a London financial firm. After 10 years, he resigned to research a book about what really had happened on that dark, drizzling night in 1974. If I believe what the papers tell me, my father was a totally unpleasant person, he said. And yet I can't find anyone who knew the man who was prepared to say anything but that he was the most wonderful company, incredibly generous, and the nicest person to be with. In 1999, Britain's High Court declared Lord Lucan dead. Thanks to his huge gambling debts, his estate was worth only £14,000. Imagine frittering away an entire estate of an earl. Unbelievable. But that's gamblers for you. They really are idiots. Well, they're addicts. They're addicted idiots. So you could argue it's not technically all their fault because it's a major addiction people have. But I grew up with those types and, they were loathsome. In more ways than one, darlings. But anyway. But not everyone is sure that the 7th Earl is dead. Even the police who pursued him are divided. After retiring from Scotland Yard, Superintendent Roy Ransom, who led the search, said he killed the nanny by mistake, thinking he could dispose of his wife and get custody of the children he loved. When he realised the error, he killed himself in some remote place, like a lord and a gentleman. Well, you could argue that. Superintendent Dave Gering, who took part in the same pursuit, disagreed. Lord Lucan is still in hiding somewhere, he said. He's a lord and a gentleman, but he's still a gambler, and he's still gambling on the odds that no one will ever find him. In the 3 decades since Lucan's disappearance, dozens of people, the sincere and the publicity-seeking, must have imagined it. Well, I saw someone walking to my gate, but there's no one there. So anyway, I was squinting, so trick of the light on my glasses probably. The sincere and the publicity-seeking have come forward to claim they knew of his whereabouts. In September 2003, a photographer claimed he had taken pictures of the Earl and produced images of a long-bearded, semi-naked hippie living in Goa, which is in India. Skeptical reporters quickly established that, far from being an Earl, the Ayers Ute man, now dead, had been a tin whistle-playing primary school teacher who moonlighted as a busker. Further probing revealed that, before leaving Britain, he had lived with his mother in a red brick semi-detached terrace in Lancashire. A Lucan sighting, which some observers have taken more seriously, was reported by a senior Sussex policeman, Detective Superintendent Tim O'Connor, who was working in New Haven when the Earl's borrowed and blood-stained car was found. 13 years after the murder, While visiting his brother in Perth, Western Australia, O'Connor became friendly with a senior policeman living next door. He said he had information that Lord Lucan was living in a Perth suburb and asked if I'd be interested in going along with the Australian detectives who'd be interviewing him. O'Connor. That's interesting because now there is a person walking past, but they're coming from that direction. So, sometimes I wonder if I just imagine seeing people, but no, that's a real person walking down the road, so I'm not crazy today, people. It's possible though that I had seen him just out of the flash out the corner of my eye, and then when I looked he'd gone up the street and come back down. That is possible. So no. Anyway, it's all a bit odd sometimes. O'Connor recalled hoping he might be able to help in an unofficial capacity. O'Connor accepted the invitation. He travelled with 2 detective constables to a pleasant house in an affluent suburb. The man who answered the door was, to me, Lord Lucan, O'Connor recalled. He was older, and his height, looks and bearing were spot on. So was the aristocratic English accent, which I feel he'd have found impossible to disguise, and his sitting room had photographs of army regiments on show. He went to a drawer and produced several British passports and driving licenses. Pardon me. In another name, but they didn't convince me. I'm wondering if I should cut out drinking tea. It doesn't seem to agree with me, people. She decides now, or randomly in the middle of the story. But anyway. He was too well prepared. I believe the man I met was Lucan. Tim O'Connor immediately submitted a report to Scotland Yard. That was in 1987. O'Connor, now retired, says he can only assume that his detailed brief was followed up, but no one has officially told him what the results were. Is Lord Lucan still alive? And is he hiding under an alias somewhere on the vast Australian continent? The question remains unanswered. Right, let's see how long this next story is. Because if it's long, very, very long, it'll have to go into another video because I'm preparing to go and visit my friend Lynn, and I don't want to be, stressed by delaying myself in the space-time continuum and getting myself all bothered and het up because I'm running late or under pressure. Mama T, as you probably realise by watching all my videos, particularly the ones of me making jewellery, don't function well under pressure. I can either be brilliant and super organised and efficient, or I can just be a bundled, gibbering wreck of nerves. But anyway, it can go either way, but either way, overcoping or undercoping are bad for me. So I like that equilibrium where I just ride very stably and judiciously and carefully through life, because to have a beautiful life you need to maintain equilibrium. Right, beautiful people of planet Earth, it's been a lovely day. I haven't even been outside to enjoy it. It's a bit of a waste, isn't it? I might sit outside for a little bit before I go off to visit my friend Lynn. Take advantage of the beautiful weather we're having right now. So, blessed be people of Earth. Have a beautiful afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are on planet Earth in your various time zones. Right now it's 3:54 p.m. on the 5th of April 2025, and I want to wish my friend Laura Martin in Canada happy birthday. I already wished her that on Facebook, and she said, "Oh, but you're in Tomorrowland," because it's not her birthday till Canada catches up to Australia as our wonderful blue marble swings on its axis. But anyway, I hope she has a wonderful day, and much love from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm.